Welcome to our eighth Teacher Summit of the year, and we have two things we're going to talk about this time. The first topic is assessment, just a basic understanding of what assessment is. Basically, as a teacher, you want to know find out how you know your students understand what you've been talking about and discussing. So basically, how do you know as a teacher your students understand what's been happening in class? And this is a part of the curriculum also. It's a big part of it. And so there's different types of ways to understand or to know that your students understand. And one is an exam, and it's quite traditional method. So there's written answers or multiple choice. Basically, you're knowing and showing that you know the information by writing it down, answering questions in a particular time and on a particular format. And the other way you can assess is presentations. So students share their knowledge and what they've known and what they've learned in class to a group, usually the class, by speaking and using some sort of visual aid to help with their sharing in their presentation. And another form of assessment is a project. So a student might work on something that displays or demonstrates their knowledge and understanding. So it could be, if it's in a music class, and you're learning about a particular scale, and then the project could be they write a melody based on that scale, something like that. And then another form of assessment would be a report, so a written demonstration of knowledge. So in music class, say you're learning about the song structure, for example, and then a report could involve them describing a song structure and then showing it in a graph or something like this. So these are basic ways, formats to assess your students' understanding if they've learned what you've been talking about. So you've been facilitating things together, and now it's time for the student to give you something back, and then you can see where they're at in their understanding. So when to assess, it's also a responsibility of the teacher to decide when an assessment is important. So there's the formative assessment, and that is in the beginning and middle of your lesson or unit or term. And then there's the summative assessment, which is at the very end of your lesson or unit or term. So I kind of made a timeline here. You can see this is a timeline of either a lesson or unit or a term. And you have the beginning, and then time passes, and then the middle, and then the end. So good places to have your assessments could be here, right after the introduction, to see where your students are at, and right here, right after the middle, to see where your students are at. And then at the end, a formative one to practice for the final one, which is the summative. And they're different, you can put different types of assessments in this time. So for example, a timeline for a lesson could be, you could have a quiz at the very beginning, and then you could have a project for them to work on during the middle of your class, and then you could have some sort of very short, small report, like speaking or writing something down to sort of reinforce maybe something they didn't get here, and then a presentation at the end. So that's just an example of a way to map out a lesson and when to assess. Another timeline is the unit, and so you could have a presentation at the beginning of a unit. A unit, it could be like between 4 to 6 lessons. So in the beginning, right here, have a presentation. In the middle, have an exam just to see where they're at in the middle of your unit after 3 weeks. And then you can have a report. They can give a report and then a project at the very end. Or you could combine these or something at the end of the unit. And then the longest timeline is the term and when to have assessments and what type. So a term could be maybe 16 weeks. And so maybe after 2 weeks, they can give a presentation. After 8 weeks, they can give a report. And then at the end, they can have these kind of coincide with each other. So anyways, these are just ideas for when and what forms of assessment you can give during a lesson or unit or term. Okay, now we're getting to the fun part, which is making an instrument, which is a really fun and also broad way to design a lesson. First, I'll show you, we can make shakers, a water bottle shaker, really easily with just materials that don't cost anything. Maybe they're already existing. So I'm going to show you making an instrument. Hold on, I'm going to share my screen with my phone, so I think, let's see. Okay, here we go. So I have a water bottle and some different materials. There's rice and there's corn, and then just some things to decorate it. So this is a really great thing for elementary students. So I'm just gonna set, let's see, I think I can set the phone like this so you can see it. Hold on. This is tricky. Sorry about this. Okay, so first you have to fill the bottle with the stuff. So these things can fall out easily from the bottle. So I just can put a piece of paper here like this. And then let's start with the rice. And then just pour the rice in. Slowly. And then close it. So now you have the shaker. But now it's time for the students to personalize their shaker and make it fun. So they could use markers and maybe make a design like a star or something, or write their initial on it. Mine is E-O. We could decorate it with tape maybe, or just anything to make it fun and make it their own. So it's just a simple shaker. And then you can do all kinds of fun things with this shaker in class. Oh, Nisha, hi. Nice to see you. So I'm gonna continue with, yeah, all you need is a plastic water bottle and filler material and decorations. Another thing that you could try is having students use different materials. So, share this again. I just want to show you. So you have this like rice sound. That's kind of fun. And then if you want it to be a little louder, you could use corn kernels, dried ones, and it will definitely give a different sound. So totally different. And actually that's a fun thing for students because it taps into sound production and I'll tell you about the different things now that you can incorporate into your learning. So one is creative arts. You can talk about design and also musical rhythms. So and the first design is making different instruments and how to make different sounds. So this percussion instrument, it's a part of the percussion family, and the sound is made because something is hitting something else, as opposed to, say, a flute, which is a stream of air is flowing, and that's how the sound is produced. So you've got this aspect of design. You can also talk about musical rhythms, which is the main thing about shakers and percussion instruments. It's just the music that you can make from the rhythmic sounds. Um, the other thing is the science, so how the tone is produced, and sound waves. So you could get into sound and a little bit of physics. So when something hits something else, why do you hear that sound, and what is causing that sound? So you disturb the air in such a way that it has these sound waves that hit your ear, because you've caused this collision between two surfaces, substances. You could also talk about materials, mass, and density. And so different types of materials, when they hit each other, produce different types of sound waves, which means they make different sounds, which is why the worm kernels sound much different than the rice, because they're different mass, different density, just different materials. So you could get into science with that. Another thing you could do is collaboration, and just if everyone has a shaker, they have to learn how to work together in order to not cause chaos and make a bunch of noise, but to actually make musical rhythms together. So collaboration is a huge thing that students will be learning in the classroom. And then finally, you can integrate a cultural lesson into it. So a lot of these shakers that you see here um, are actually a part of Brazilian music. So you could totally get into culture in Brazil. What do they, what kind of music do they play? When do they play that type of music? When do they use the shakers? And maybe some classic Brazilian rhythms. So much that you can do with a little shaker. You can open the world for them to so many areas. And then, oh, what happened? Oh yeah, okay. So how you can use this in your class time, there's so many different things you could do that I showed you before, but some really practical things is call and response game. So just say I want to have them learn about 4/4 time. So like 1, 2, 3, 4. So invent a rhythm. The leader will invent a rhythm that is inside that time signature. Okay, yeah, 4/4. So I'm just gonna do 4 quarter notes. Oh, by the way, you can teach them about technique, which is you hold it like this and shaping methods too. And so then your students have to respond to that, and then you make another one, 1, 2, and 3, 4, and then they can respond 1, 2, and 3, 4. So it's similar to that drum call and response that we did before, but this time you can do it with a shaker, and it's much easier for every single student to have their own instrument. Um, and then you can branch out. So instead of doing 4/4, you could do something like 6/8. So 1, 2, 3. And in that you can also talk about dynamics. So you've got loud one, and then 2, 5, 5, 5, 5. So it's just a good way to teach about rhythm and have them like learn kinesthetically, not just visual or audio. Um, and then sometimes having call and response in your class is a good way to just recenter your students. So just say I'm teaching them about a particular Brazilian type of song, maybe like a work song that they have in the culture. But for some students, it can be like, oh, there's so much to learn about that. I feel a bit overwhelmed, and then they shut off. Um, but if you can bring them back in by having them copy you and make a rhythm. And then it makes the instrument come to life, and they can think, oh, yeah, I can do this. And then they're engaged. And then once they're engaged, you can teach them anything. If they're having fun, they'll absorb anything. So, call and response is a good way to just bring them in, give them a good time, and then teach them something challenging. Like their brain will be ready for it. And then another way to use it is, oh, rhythm memory games. Okay, so this is actually really fun. Um, a rhythm memory is where you can have your students sitting in a circle, and each one of them has their own rhythm. So um, just say, so the three of us are sitting in a circle. So my rhythm, it has to be within a measure. So just say let's say we do 3/4. So there's 3 beats. So my rhythm would be 1, 2, 3, like that. And then Prabals could be 1, 2, and Nisha could be 1, 2, 3. If you have like eighth notes on different beats. Anyways, so just say instead of my name is Eileen, I am 1 and 2, 3. And instead of Prabal, his name being Prabal, his name is 1, 2, and 3. And then Nishal's is 1, 2, 3, and. So you just like assign different rhythms to each student, and then you have them sit in a circle, and then you have the student bounce the rhythms off each other. So just say it's my turn. I play my rhythm. My rhythm, 1 and 2, and then I want to give it to Nishal, so I play Nishal's rhythm. And Nishal right away will have to play his rhythm, 1, 2, 3, and then give it to someone, maybe Prabal. So they're like bouncing the rhythms off each other. This is definitely for older kids, like maybe 5th grade, 6th grade. So they have to keep this steady beat, and they have to be listening, remember theirs, and then play the other person's. And they have to be quite comfortable with rhythms and listening. But once they get to it, they can play that bouncing the rhythm to each other game. And if there's more students, the rhythm probably has to be a bit longer. So the rhythmic pattern that they choose for themselves. But anyways, it's a really fun game. It gets them to listen, to engage with each other, collaborate with each other. And then finally, I didn't write this down in the slides, but you can actually have them play pieces of music together. And it can be just one pattern that they play together, or it could be a pattern where it's like a round. So they have one pattern, one pattern, one pattern. One group plays this pattern. It's I had something like that for the monsoon game. So you've got one pattern, and then another pattern. So you can have one group play the first rhythm, one group play the second rhythm, and then they can switch, and then have them play games like that. So rhythmic rounds or rhythmic songs is another way to captivate them, and then teach them about rhythm, teach them about collaboration, and then the songs. So having them, just say you want to bring them into something like Brazilian culture, because a lot of shakers are a part of that, their music, then finding a rhythm that is very standard to Brazilian music, and having them learn how to play it is another huge window of learning for them. And just seeing a new culture through music is a really powerful way for students to explore and understand and expand their minds. Um, so the resource that I would suggest for the cultural lesson, if you end up doing Shakers, is the Smithsonian Folkways. It's in the Google Drive, and I'll also add it to the slides. I can actually show you by going here. So, I'm just going to show you the folder that you, oh no, it's here. The folder that you have access to is this one, Music Class Resources. And then in this document, Online Teaching Resources, the one that I found so helpful when I'm teaching about different cultures is this one, Smithsonian Folkways Recordings, lesson plans inspired by recordings of folk music from around the world. So if you go to this website, this museum's website, in the lesson plan section, okay, I want to go to Brazil. So I'll just see that there is a lesson in Brazil. Yeah, there's 3. Let's try this one. So capoeira, martial arts meets music. Oh yeah. That's quite an interesting movement and music of Brazil. This one seems like it's quite accessible. You learn about the samba and the carimbo. So this would be a great thing to teach the kids because it's quite classic in Brazil. So you just click on the lesson plan and then it'll take you to this entire lesson plan. It's pretty fun. And there we have it. Some rhythms. This would be the shaker. Lots of 16th notes. Very fun. Anyways, so that's a resource for you that would definitely be helpful for a shaker lesson. Yeah, so that's it. It's just about assessment and then using something quite simple that anyone can find. Like, it's one thing that's fun about the shaker is there's plastic water bottles everywhere. And I'm sure you can find some popcorn kernels or rice, and then the students don't have to take turns sharing an instrument, and then they'll have a really fun time. So that is all for this summit. I'm going to stop recording now.